Our foundress was Sister Mary Aikenhead, and she was born in 1787. And her mother was a Catholic, and her father was a doctor, but a non-Catholic. And as Mary, so the children weren't brought up as Catholics, because in those days they had to follow the father's religion. So when he was going on his rounds, as she got older, she used to go round with him in his carriage and visit the sick patients. He used to go out visiting everybody. So he died shortly afterwards, but before he died, his wife became a Catholic. So in that respect, Mary became a Catholic. So anyway, she decided she wanted to carry on doing work like her father. So she came up to Dublin, and she was born in Cork, and came up to Dublin and spoke to the Archbishop there and said she wanted to help people. So he decided, yes, we'll talk about it. Anyway, she went over to England to train how to be a sister in the Bar Convent in York. And after 3 years, she came back and founded the Sisters of Charity.
And what is the charism of the Sisters of Charity?
The charism is service of the poor. That was our main one. We've 4 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience, and service of the poor. So that's really the charism, that we go out and look after people. But because we just don't do that, we have every kind of work. We're teachers, we're nurses, we're social workers. We were the first to open a hospital in Dublin, St. Vincent's Hospital. We were the first to open a hospital and a hospice in Dublin, and things spread then after that.
Lovely. Carolyne, tell us about the hospice movement and the underpinning the Catholic ethos. Why is that important?
Personally, and I suppose globally, it's incredibly important because with the vision of the Sisters of Charity and Venerable Mary Aikenhead, those seeds that were sown back then in Ireland, when the first 5 sisters, there's a bit of a story really to it, because St. Joseph's Hospice is one of the first hospices that was ever created. The first hospice actually was founded by Venerable Mary herself in Ireland, Harold's Cross in Dublin. But there are other hospices in this country that were probably around the same time as St. Joseph's. So the vision of the sisters and the vision of Venerable Mary Aikenhead's charism to serve the poor actually came across the Irish Sea at the invitation, beautiful story, by the invitation of Cardinal Vaughan back in 1900. But there's a character who was part of the story, who was a Jesuit priest called Father Peter Galway. And he was a County Kerry person. He was from Ireland, so he knew the sisters in Ireland and he knew what they were doing. So their work, the early seeds of their work for service of the poor, caring for those in need, caring for the sick, he actually knew what was happening across the water. And when we started to look deeply at our heritage, one of the things I think that moved us deeply, when we read some memoirs from the life of Peter Galway, we realised that he had actually prayed for 30 years, 30, we couldn't believe it, for the foundation of St. Joseph's Hospice. He resided in a wealthy part of London, I believe near the Ritz Hotel in Mayfair, and he really wanted a place in this part of London, in Hackney, Hoxton, all around the East End, where people were really, really in need, very poor, dying of what was called the consumption back then, which is TB, in terrible poverty. For 30 years, he prayed and he wrote to the sisters, which we still have copies of some of the letters. And he never, ever gave up hope. And then, even in this story, another character came in by the name of Grace Goldsmith, who was a Jewish lady, and she became very good friends with Father Peter as she was journeying in her conversion to become a Catholic. And when her parents died, she actually gave the will, the money, to Father Peter to buy the foundation for St. Joseph's. So as these letters were going backwards and forwards, because the sisters were very busy in Ireland, I mean, they were even connected in some way to Florence Nightingale. So there was a lot going on back in that era. But the sisters, in their vision, and Venerable Mary Aikenhead knew that there was a need here. And so eventually, when the money arrived and the foundation was given, they were able to send 5 sisters across, 5 sisters of charity, who their names are so important. Catherine O'Flynn, Winifred Sugru, Mary Sabus O'Connor, Aloysius Martin, and Mary Uriel Duffy. That's all we know about them. But they came across the water, started St. Joseph's Hospice, opened it very quietly. And one of the things I think with the hospice movement, if you look at the seeds of it, it wasn't a massive opening. It opened very quietly, very peacefully. And as a Catholic foundation, the motto of the sisters, Caritas Christi erget nos, the love of Christ compels us, was the most beautiful motto, because Jesus Christ is truly present here. He's behind us in the Blessed Sacrament, in the Eucharist, but he's here in the hearts of the sisters and in the hearts of the faithful, and he's here for everybody. And that was the vision of the sisters. They didn't mind whether people had faith or no faith. It was just the love that compelled them. And it does move forwards, okay, because they moved here quietly and they worked here for maybe about 30 or 40 years. People joined from all walks of life, joined the staff, and in 1905, the hospice in some ways had to open very quickly because word had got out that the sisters had found the beds, the place was just about ready to open, and the people outside wheeled in a tram driver called Richard Whelan, who is our first patient, and he was dying of TB. So he was our first patient, and we still have his name written there as the sisters wrote it. As the work carried on very quietly, word got out. It became known nationally, even to the government, where we were given some funding. And then became the foundation of the modern hospice movement, which was Cicely Saunders. So one of the things that Cicely Saunders learnt very quickly when she came to work here was that dying was about living. Okay, so there was a life before the final act, which is death. And that was actually given great example by the sisters because, for example, the type of building that was here had really big windows, so the light was able to come in and the patients could see out of those windows and watch life going on outside. For example, the trams going past, people walking in and out. And I did read a textbook recently where there was a comment about patients who actually enjoyed watching the staff coming in because it gave them a sense of normality. So it was about the living. And I think where Cicely Saunders came in and did her research, she actually learnt quite a lot from the sisters and took that into the modern hospice movement, which became the foundations of palliative care as we know it today, both here and nationally, internationally. And one of the things I think that became one of the definitions or part of the definition of palliative care, which still stands today, is, and it was one of Dame Cicely Saunders, or Cicely Saunders' beautiful phrases, that we help people to live. We don't help people to die. We help people to live as well as they can until they die. And it's that living, however that might look, being realistic. Because for some people, they can have a long life before their death, Some people only have a matter of hours or even minutes, but that is so important, those moments, those hours, the days, the months before the dying. It's that life that matters, and I think that's certainly true here at the hospice. We have a holistic approach to care, multidisciplinary, so we don't work in isolation. We have different disciplines that can actually bring their expertise to help enable people to fulfill and to be fulfilled, whatever that fulfillment is for them as they journey towards their death.
And you know, I've been here twice, and sometimes when you go to a hospice, perhaps people can be forgiven for thinking it might be a sad place or a place where, you know, you come to die and all the negatives that surround that. Both of you have spoken very eloquently about the fact that that's not the aim here. The aim is to help you live in order to die. So tell me a little bit about how people react to coming into the hospice in that sense. Do they have the fear, the trepidation, or do they quickly feel more peaceful being here?
I think a bit of both, really.
Yes, they are frightened sometimes
Yes.
coming in.
I think people, and it's not just patients or their families actually, it's even when as a trainer, as an educationalist, sometimes students have come here, nurses, doctors and other people, and had a perception of a hospice being a very sad place and have had that perception lifted. But certainly patients and their families will often fear coming in or fear the word palliative care, even out there in the generalist world, because they feel that we cannot offer anything. When they say there's nothing else we can do, that is absolutely not true. There's a lot that we can do, and I think that's what they feel here. There's life. So there's living, there's laughter, there's entertainment, there's activities. And yes, there is the dying, and there is the end point. And I think one of the other parts of the philosophy of palliative care is that we accept death when it comes. We neither hasten death nor postpone it. So the death part, it becomes part of the fabric of the hospice, and certainly in this chapel, the oldest part of the building, where we often in our book we see people that have been here and written from their hearts dedications to their loved ones, whether they've any faith or not. So death becomes part of the fabric, but not the dominant part of the fabric.
Do you know what I love? I love the fact that the word that's used so much, not just in this interview, but in this place, is life. Life seems to really come forward in this place. So even though, you know, rightly we acknowledge the sad moments, but we use that phrase, don't we, sometimes? Life is changed, not ended. But it doesn't matter if you're religious or not, really. I think one wants to hang on to the sort of contribution a loved one has made, that the imprint they've left on the world. Does that come through quite a lot?
Absolutely. And I think when people write their dedications, it's their legacy. And we do remember. And we remember at Mass every day, for example, all our patients and the legacy and all our benefactors every day. So their life, their memory lives on. As Dame Cicely Saunders would have said, you know, that living on, it's so important to us here at the hospice. But I think for us as people, you know, we all hold our memories of our loved ones when they've gone before us. Yes, life lives in us. Or if you like, the continuing bond that we keep with our loved ones.
And tell us about those volunteers, because again, you know, in order to have committed volunteers, you need a bit of a special place, don't you? A place that people want to come and want to contribute. I heard there are over 500 here, which is quite remarkable, isn't it? Is that, do you think, because of the ethos of the place, or at least a factor in encouraging people to contribute?
But very often, their loved one might have come in here, was looked after and died, and very often they want to give back. Isn't that right, Carolyne?
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it is the ethos for many, and I think what you've said is absolutely nail on the head, because some people will want to give something back for what the hospice has done for their loved one. I also feel that for other volunteers, it might be some more of an altruistic approach that they have. They want to come in and to help in that way without any faith foundation, or even not even knowing the ethos of the place. I think when they do come, they soon pick up the deeper aspects of our ethos. And also, our volunteers are highly valuable to us. It's part of our one workforce, and we hoped that we can give back to the volunteers something in the way of experience as well. So it's a two-way thing. But yes, we do have a lot of people who serve with us to keep us going, and without them we wouldn't be here, we couldn't continue. And that's rooted right back to the beginning, because even back then in 1905 people gave their time, GPs, catering, laundry, the local laundry people. It's even really back then. So we've had something, I think, that's drawn people in, and it still does today. And that might be St. Joseph's, or it could be the hospice movement on a wider scale that attracts people.
And one final question to both of you. What would you like the legacy of this place to be when you're no longer here?
Do you want to go first?
Well, to continue looking and caring for people, no matter who they are or what they are, they'd be welcome here to be cared for. So I'd like that to continue.
Same as Sister Maria, but I feel we've put the roots down. We're standing on shoulders of giants who have gone before us. I would like a legacy to be that we are the shoulders that other people come and stand on. And I think there were pioneers back then who inspired and continued this place. The reality of society and palliative care, with some of the threats on the horizon, with a sister dying, for example. I think, and I would like to see a legacy of St. Joseph's where there are pioneers that emerge again, or that we become the pioneer to lead forwards what palliative care truly is, right from its beginning. And I think that, for me, way down the line, obviously with its Catholic heart, there's a lot that St. Joseph's has to give for years to come.